She didn't ignore you because she was busy. She didn't take long to respond because she fell asleep. And she's definitely not being cold because you were too nice. The truth is much more uncomfortable than that. She ignored you because you were there. Because you responded too quickly. Because you wanted to talk. And right now, maybe she's laughing at some other guy's messages who didn't even respond to her last one. This isn't about injustice, it's about biological structure. There's a hidden, almost primitive code that governs the way women respond to men. A code that says what's scarce is valuable, what's rare is desired, what's common is ignored. You can be the perfect guy, the available one, the romantic one, the present one, and still she'll pull away. Because by being consistent, you become predictable. By being accessible, you become ordinary. And what's ordinary will never be an object of desire. The worst part? It goes against everything you've been taught. They told you that love is built with presence, that interest generates reciprocity. They lied. In the game of attraction, visible effort generates repulsion. Excessive communication destroys mystery, and mystery is the spark of desire. And if that sounds too harsh for you, then maybe you're not ready to see what's behind the real game. This video is not for those who want light advice. It's for those who want to understand what no one has ever explained. Why the less you talk, the more interested she is. You grew up believing that effort equals reward. That the more you show interest, the more likely you are to be noticed. At school, this made sense. Those who studied more got better grades. At work, it also seemed logical. More dedication, more recognition. But in the realm of female attraction, this logic collapses. Because there, visible effort is not seen as value, it is seen as necessity. And necessity to the female instinct is a sign of weakness. You think you are showing dedication. She sees desperation. And the worst part is that this mistake is not just yours, it is cultural. Movies, soap operas, and even advice from mothers and friends reinforce that winning someone over is about presence, about showing that you care. But evolutionary psychology has another answer. Women are programmed to look for unconscious signs of value, and men who try too hard to be seen convey the opposite of that. Plato said that love is born of lack. And that is exactly why excessive communication kills desire. When you are always available, answer every message, ask how their day was, try to make conversation all the time. You eliminate any emotional gap that could generate tension. And tension, in the game of attraction, is everything. There is no desire without tension. Desire is the space between the touch and the kiss, between the look and the act. When you anticipate everything with words, when you give away all the mystery in a banal conversation, you dissolve what could be enchantment. You become an open book, and open books do not capture curiosity. Think of the archetype of the too good of a man. The guy who does everything right. Takes you out to dinner, listens attentively, compliments politely, and yet he hears the most painful phrase in the female vocabulary. You are incredible, but I see you as a friend. Why? Because he was too predictable. There was a lack of contrast, tension, mystery. The opposite of desire is not repulsion, it is predictability. And that is when silence, absence, and distance become weapons of attraction. But there is an even crueler trap, the male desire for emotional control. Men tend to seek security in relationships. They want to know where they stand, if she likes them, if everything is going well. That's why they talk, ask questions, and seek validation. But ironically, this desire for control is exactly what betrays their insecurity. A confident man doesn't need to talk all the time. He doesn't seek a yes all the time. He takes a stand and lets the other person react. Nietzsche said that happiness lies in the feeling that power grows. And that's exactly what's missing in a man who talks too much. Power. His constant talking reveals a lack of control, presence, and focus. Meanwhile, the guy who doesn't talk much, who responds calmly, who disappears for days and then shows up as if nothing had happened, he creates discomfort. But he also generates magnetism. She thinks about him, gets irritated with him, complains to her friend, but she thinks. And what occupies the mind dominates the heart. But let's be clear, it's not about ignoring out of ego. It's about not compensating with words for what you haven't yet built internally. Many men talk too much because they don't have a life to speak for themselves. So they try to fill the void with communication. They try to replace power with presence. But that doesn't fool anyone. Women can sense when you're trying to sell value, and no one is attracted to a product that tries to explain itself all the time. True seduction is confident silence. It's the man who walks into a room and doesn't need to introduce himself, because his energy has already done that for him. And maybe now you're thinking, but how will she know that I like her if I don't tell her? And that's the wrong question. The real question is, why do you need her to know this now? The game isn't about rushing, it's about tension. And tension is built on absence. You want to be the guy she discovers, not the guy who declares himself. You want her to question, to imagine, to doubt. Because it's in doubt that interest is born. And it's in this fertile ground of uncertainty that masculine power begins. And if you think this is manipulation, think of Ovid, who said 2,000 years ago that the art of loving is an art of hiding. Love, in its rawest form, is a game of perceptions, not explicit truths. But modern man has forgotten this. He has become anxious, immediate, hungry for answers. And in this desperation to be understood, he talks. He talks too much, and by talking he breaks the spell. But the spell only works when there is something that cannot be named. Silence, far from being a vacuum, is the invisible frame that transforms words into art. It is the pause between notes that transforms sound into music. And in seduction, silence is where desire is cultivated, watered and transformed into fascination. You might think that absence breeds disinterest, but that is the mentality of those who live in need mode. The brutal truth is that mystery is more aphrodisiac than any well-crafted sentence, and mystery only arises when there is space. Space that silence creates, sustains, and amplifies. When a man speaks little, he sends a silent signal. My time is valuable. My energy is not for everyone. My focus is selective. And this type of communication, even if non-verbal, touches instincts deep in the female psyche. Instincts shaped by thousands of years of social and biological selection. Think of the men who dominate the collective attention. They are not the ones who talk too much, but the ones who talk little, and when they do speak, everyone listens. CEOs, political leaders, legendary artists, none of them are verbose. They select words as if each one had an emotional cost. And that cost creates value. A man who is scarce in words is perceived as being scarce in accessibility. And scarcity is the trigger for value. When it is difficult to reach you, when your attention is not automatic, when your presence is an exception and not a rule, you become special. You become something rare. And what is rare activates the obsession circuit. Cleopatra seduced empires not by showing too much of herself, but by hiding enough to be sought after. Marilyn Monroe exuded vulnerability and confidence at the same time, creating a dissonance that mesmerized. And if you study any highly desired figure, you will see that the pattern repeats itself. They are not obvious, they are complex. And silence is the raw material of complexity. But let's touch on the sore spot. Silence scares you because it reveals itself. When you stop talking, you realize how uncomfortable you are with the void. You feel the need to fill that space with justifications, compliments, validations, and that's when you give the game away. You show that you need to be accepted. But the truly seductive man doesn't seek acceptance. He offers a challenge. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't fill silences. He imposes them. And by doing so, he changes the dynamics of the conversation. Now it's her who needs to act to keep his attention. This isn't arrogance. It's social magnetism. A magnetism built on a simple behavior, communicating as if you have more to do. And here's the magic. Even if you don't have such an amazing life yet, you can learn to communicate as if you did. And this perception is more powerful than reality itself. As Robert Greene says in The Art of Seduction, the successful seducer creates an aura of superiority without having to say it. This translates into pauses, glances, incomplete sentences, disappearing at the right time. Don't confuse silence with indifference. Indifference deactivates. Strategic silence, on the other hand, instigates. It's loaded with intention. He suggests but doesn't deliver. He invites but doesn't beg. The difference between the two is subtle but decisive. A truly seductive man creates this tension masterfully. He's there, but he's not completely surrendered. He shows interest, but in moderation. He shares something, but leaves loose ends, gaps that she will want to fill. And the proof that this works is in her behavior. Notice, The woman who receives messages every day, endless calls, constant declarations, gets used to it. And when something becomes routine, it loses emotional value. Now think of the opposite. The guy who sends an unexpected message, who disappears for days, who responds with short but intriguing sentences. This guy takes up mental space. He doesn't need to be present. He's in her head. That's why the biggest mistakes men make happen after they win her over. The guy relaxes, starts talking too much, showing too much, always being available, and so unconsciously he becomes just another one. He comes down from his pedestal, and desire dies. Because desire is not fueled by what you give, but by what you withhold. And perhaps now you are beginning to understand, silence is not absence, it is authority. A man who speaks little communicates that his attention is selective, that he lives beyond his cell phone, beyond validation, beyond her. And this activates something ancient in the female instinct, the desire for conquest. She wants to discover more. She wants to understand who you are. She wants to break the code, and that is the beginning of true attraction. Now that you understand the value of silence and the psychological effect of mystery, it's time to turn this knowledge into practical power. Because it's not enough to just talk less, you have to communicate like a man of status. And status in this context is not an expensive car or Instagram followers. Status is perception. It's how she sees you, how she interprets you, how she feels about your presence or your absence. The first pillar of this code is the principle of scarcity of presence. You need to make each interaction carry weight. This means don't respond automatically. Don't speak when there's no intention. If she starts a conversation with a hi, don't respond with a generic, hi, how are you? Leave space. Wait. Observe the pattern. Did she insist? Now you respond with something that generates imagination, not with facts. Replace, how was your day? With I bet you caused some chaos today. This generates image, and images remain. Common phrases evaporate. The second pillar is strategic disappearance. The man who is always present becomes part of the emotional furniture. You need to learn to disappear, not for the sake of playing games, but for the sake of purpose. Go off the radar for 48 hours, 72 hours, live, create, build. And when you reappear, bring something new with you. A new place, a new idea, a new vision. Never reappear the same. Mystery is movement. Third pillar, control your pace. Talk less than she does. Always. If she sends 3 messages, respond with one that is worth 3. Use dramatic pauses. End conversations first. Give the feeling that you have something more important to do, even if you don't. And, by the way, you should. Because this is the fourth key. Silence only has power when it is anchored in a real purpose. There is no point in keeping quiet and expecting results. You need to be someone who, even when silent, has a life that speaks for him. A man involved in something greater than conquest. Men with purpose send an invisible signal. I don't have time for games. And it is this signal that awakens the deepest interest. But perhaps the most powerful and most ignored trick is knowing when to break the silence. When you speak little, each word becomes powerful. Each sentence is analyzed, reread, valued. So when you choose to speak, you create an impact. Use this to touch emotionally. Tell short stories with open endings. Use subtle humor. Make statements that seem like riddles. For example, you have a side that you probably don't even realize yet, but it's there. And stop there. Let her try to understand. The unconscious loves an unsolved mystery. In the end, the unbeatable are not the most handsome, nor the richest, nor the strongest. They are the most unpredictable. The ones who appear and disappear like an enigma. The ones who never say everything. The ones who make your heart race, not by shouting love, but by leaving questions in the air. And if you want to be that kind of man, you need to understand that talking less is just the beginning. What matters is what you do in the silence, what you build in the absence, because the man she can't figure out is the man she can never forget. And maybe now, finally, you'll start to understand. You don't need to talk to win her over. You need to make yourself unforgettable in silence, and if you do it right, she'll chase after what you never said.